Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatarata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhaishana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatarata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Jainitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 15, Description of the Kingdom of God, text number 38. Tam tvagatam parihritopaikam svapumbhis te chakshataksha vishayam svasamadhi bhagyam hamsa shriyor vyajanayo shivavayu lolach Shubhratapatra shashi keshara shikrambhum tam tvagatam pratihritopayikam svapumbhis te chakshataksha vishayam svasamadhi bhagyam Hamsa shriyor vyajanayo shivavayu lolach Chubrata patra shashi keshara shikarambum Mataji's. Tam, him, tu, but, agatam, coming forward, pratihirta, carried, opayikam, the paraphernalia, swapumbihi, by his own associates, te, the great sages, the Kumaras, achakshata, saw, akshavishayam, now a subject matter for seeing. Swasamadhi bhagyam, visible simply by ecstatic trance. Hamsa shriyo, as beautiful as white swans. Vyajanayoho, the chamaras, bunches of white hair. Shivavayu, favorable winds. Lolat, moving. Shubra Atapatra, the white umbrella. Shashi, the moon. Kesara, pearls. Shikara, drops. Ambum, water. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the sages headed by Sanaka Rishi saw that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who was formerly visible only within their hearts in ecstatic trance, had now actually become visible to their eyes. As he came forward accompanied by his own associates bearing all paraphernalia such as an umbrella and a chamra fan, the white bunches of hair moved very gently, like two swans, and due to their favorable breeze, the pearls garlanding the umbrella also moved, like drops of nectar falling from the white full moon or ice melting due to a gust of wind. Purport. In this verse we find the word achakshataksha vishayam. The Supreme Lord cannot be seen by ordinary eyes, but he now became visible to the eyesight of the Kumaras. Another significant word is samadhi bhagyam. Meditators who are very fortunate can see the Vishnu form of the Lord within their hearts by following the yogic process, but to see him face to face is a different matter. This is only possible for pure devotees. The Kumaras, therefore, upon seeing the Lord coming forward with his associates, who were holding an umbrella and a chamra fan, were struck with wonder that they were seeing the Lord face to face. It is said in the Brahma Samhita that devotees, being elevated in love of God, always see Shyam Sundar, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within their hearts. But when they are mature, the same God is visible before them face to face. For ordinary persons, the Lord is not visible. However, when one can understand the significance of His holy name and one engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, beginning with the tongue, by chanting and tasting prasad, then gradually the Lord reveals Himself. Thus the devotee constantly sees the Lord within his heart, and in a more mature stage, one can see the same Lord directly as we see everything else. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantigam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishri Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning. Thank you for coming this morning. This verse is talking about seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The four Kumaras, we understand, were first of all Brahmavadis. Now, the definition that I've heard for Brahmavadis is that they appreciate, or at least theoretically understand, that a Supreme Personality of Godhead exists, that the absolute truth has a form, has an eternal Satchitananda form. However, they're still attracted to the impersonal Brahman aspect. So the four Kumars were Brahmavadis. They were more attracted to the Brahman, and as a result, they are not pure devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But, as Rasananda Prabhu was mentioning, when the question was asked, how is it that such apparently unqualified personalities at that point in time, how are they able to enter into Vaikuntha? Well, it's because they got the fragrance of the Tulsi, Kinjal ka Mishra Tulasi Makarandavayu, from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. This touch, not even directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but even indirectly by the Tulsi leaves. And we can also understand that just as the four Kumars became pure devotees indirectly by getting the fragrance of the Tulsi leaves, which were adorning the lotus feet of Narayan, similarly, conditioned souls can also become pure devotees indirectly, without directly coming in contact with Krishna. How? By coming in contact with Krishna's devotees. So the devotees are the paraphernalia of Krishna, just as the Tulsi leaves are also paraphernalia of Lord Krishna as well. So in the same way. Now there's different ways that we can conceptualize and see or understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can see this on a material platform, and we can understand this on a spiritual platform. Our acharyas explain, specifically Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he does this analysis, and I was listening to a lecture by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu long while back, and he mentions this analysis of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Srila Prabhupada also mentions this in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that those who are very, very materialistic, for them it is best to understand and appreciate the Supreme Personality of Godhead by appreciating the material energy. Because they're already worshipping the material energy. For them, the material energy is great, it's enormous, and they surrender themselves to the material energy. Just as we see the Uttama Adhikari, such a person, he sees that even those who are in Maya are actually devotees of Krishna as well. Why? Because they're worshipping they're serving the material energy. Right? So if we take this platform of understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth on the material energy level, we can see that there's many primitive cultures in the world who see great phenomena in material nature. For example, thunder and lightning. You know, when Krishna says in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyat Anna Sambhava. They stop there. So, okay, we need food to live, and the food is coming from the clouds, the rain. So then they worship Mother Nature in this way. They don't see what is behind the rain, what is behind the clouds, prescribed duties, scriptures, and these two things are coming from Krishna. They don't see that. They just see their conception is just limited by material energy, because that's all they can deal with. That's all they can see with their material eyes. So that's one level. Now if such personalities, they advance a little bit further, they come to worshipping the source, the very source, the most powerful form of the material energy, which is the sun. So they become Shauryas. And we see many great cultures in antiquity, in human history, they're worshipping the sun. We see even in our Vedic culture, the fire yagya, this homa activity, worshipping Surya Dev. It is there as an offshoot, as a demigod worship, offshoot of Vedic culture. The sun god is also referred to as Surya Narayana as well. We see the ancient Zarathushtri culture, Zoroastrian culture of Iran, they are also worshipping the sun, they're also worshipping fire. Ancient cultures in the Middle East, there are great kingdoms in the Middle East, even in where modern day Syria is located right now, they were also worshipping the sun. So this is an offshoot from the original Vedic culture, which is actually focused on Bhagavad Bhakti, worshipping Krishna, Lord Vishnu. However, the side part of it, the upa part of it, worshipping the demigods, that is something which flourished to outside lands, outside of Bharatavarsha. So we see that they're worshipping the material energy, but then by getting a bit more purified, they worship the very source of the material energy, or the representation of material energy, the most powerful representation, which is the sun. Such people, if they advance a little bit further, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, then instead of worshipping the material energy, they start to worship consciousness, which is the driving force behind the material energy. And they worship that in the form of different living entities. Avinashi tu tad viddhi yena saram idam tata. Vinasham avyasya na kashchit karatum arati. Krishna tells Arjuna in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Antavanta ime deha nitya shokta sharina. The consciousness is the driving force within this material body. The material body is temporary and impermanent, but the soul is na sato vidyate bhava. Na abhava vidyate sata. It is eternal. So they worship the consciousness through subhuman living entities, like animals. For example, the situation in Navadvip had degraded so much before the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that the local villagers in that area were actually worshipping animals. I remember seeing a documentary a long time ago when I was a kid of some country in Africa, on the African continent, some tribal village somewhere. They used to marry frogs together. They used to marry goats and buffaloes together. So this is a representation of eulogizing subhuman species as having some, godlike characteristics, worshipable characteristics. Again, just like on the material platform, how people went from worshipping the material energy to worshipping the sun, which is the very powerful representation of the material energy. Similarly, such people who are worshipping consciousness in the form of subhuman species, they go on to worshipping consciousness in its topmost representation, which is in the form of a great person. That great person, Bhaktivinoda Thakur refers to is Shiva, Lord Shiva. So they become Shaivites. So first they are Shaktas, they worship the material energy. The Shaktas, they become Shauryas, they worship the sun. Then they become Ganapatayas, they're worshipping animals. And in that way, he says that they worship Lord Ganesh. By being further purified, they then start worshipping Lord Shiva, great personalities. And it doesn't need to be Lord Shiva. Even nowadays we see that people are worshipping great movie actors and great musicians. This is also an example of that. Worshipping a great person because he or she may have some opulences, beauty, wealth, name, fame, like that, and eulogizing them as representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the conceptualization of God on the material platform. But then we have to jump the Viraja river and come to the transcendental platform. And here there are three conceptions of understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagwaniti, Shabdite. Now the four Kumaras were worshipping Brahman. They smelt the tulsi, and then they came into an ecstatic trance within their hearts. They started to conceptualize Krishna, the Bhagavan Krishna, Narayan, within their hearts. Now here they're seeing that they're about to curse Jay and Vijay, and all of a sudden that very personality which had appeared in their hearts is now coming face to face, eye to eye. And they're amazed by this. So if we want to see something on the mature platform, we need at least two qualifications. First of all, my spiritual master, he explains this example, that first of all we need knowledge about the very thing we're seeing with our eyes. For example, if you're looking through a microscope at some cells, at some bacteria, if you don't have knowledge at what you're looking at, then you're seeing it with your eyes, but you're not able to understand what it is. Right? So you need material knowledge to back up and understand what you're seeing with your material senses, which is your eyes. Secondly, and this is an interesting one, your mind has to be focused on what your senses are interacting with. For example, you may be looking at, a tree, right? Looking at a tree and it has some beautiful fruits apples, whatever, apricots, whatever, and you're looking, but then someone comes and whispers in your ear some bad news. Or maybe one of your relatives, they're a bit sick or something like that. Now you're looking at the apple tree, but your mind is now preoccupied in thoughts of what this person just told you. So your eyes are open, they're looking at the tree, but at the same time it can be said that you're not looking at the tree as well. Because your mind is somewhere else. You're not realizing that you're looking at what you're looking at. So, in addition to mature knowledge, you also need to be meditating and focused on what you're interacting with, the senses. Now, when it comes to spirituality, we may say that transcendental knowledge is necessary to understand Krishna, but actually speaking, advancement in Krishna consciousness is just dependent on one thing. Yes, lolium, greed must be there, but actually it's only dependent on bhakti. Krishna says, bhaktya mam abhijanati. He doesn't say jnana mam abhijanati. He doesn't say cultivate knowledge about my opulence and then you'll understand me. He says, no. There are many pure devotees of Krishna who are illiterate. For example, Gaurkishandas Babaji Maharaj, or the illiterate Brahmana in South India who's sitting in the temple, reading the Bhagavad Gita upside down, back to front. Still Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said he's a pure devotee. There are many pure devotees of Krishna who can't see with their eyes, like Bilva Mangal Thakur, Bilashuk. He plucked out his material eyes. He didn't have the eyes to see Krishna, the same eyes which the four Kumars are using to behold Narayan. Still he was a pure devotee. So, our advancement in Krishna consciousness is not dependent on how much jnana we have. It is not dependent on how nicely our material senses are working. It is simply dependent on one thing, and that is our devotional attitude towards Krishna. That is all. Now, here we're seeing how the four Kumars were at a point of being not qualified to enter Vaikuntha, being not qualified to even approach the Bhagavan aspect of the Supreme Personality Godhead. And now, by their good fortune, they came in touch with the breeze carrying the aroma of the tulsi leaves, and they became qualified. Of course, we can give other reasons as well. For example, we can say that they were related to Lord Brahma, who was a pure devotee of Krishna. At the beginning of the creation, he shook hands with Krishna. He recited the Brahma Samhita. So they're pure devotees. Now this same Brahma is saying to them, the four Kumaras, that progenate this material universe. And what do the four Kumaras say? They say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to stay as young kids and we want to cultivate spiritual life. And apparently Brahma gets angry. He does get angry. And Rudra comes from between his eyebrows. Why? Because his four sons did not follow his instructions. This same Brahma, later on in the 10th canto, is saying, Jnane prayasa udapasa namante eva jivanti sanmukuritam bhavadiyavartam stane stita shutigatam tanuvan manobir yaprayasho ajitojitapis taistri lokyam. He's saying, set aside this jnana, give it up, and just cultivate Krishna consciousness. Doesn't matter about your material condition. Stane stita, stay where you are and cultivate Krishna consciousness. So, even though externally it seems that Brahma is upset at his four sons for not adhering to his instructions to populate, at the same time, this same Brahma, who is indeed a pure devotee of Krishna, is also pleased that his four sons are now pure devotees of Krishna. And we can testify that by saying that he is indeed pleased with Narada Muni, who is also a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. Lord Brahma is imparting instructions to his son Narada Muni, telling him, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Iti Shodashaka Namnam Kalikalmashanashanam Nata Puruturupaya Saravedeshu Drishyate. So indeed, he must be pleased also with the four Kumars, who went from being Brahmamadis to being pure devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can also say, Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jagati Ajasram. Krishna's pastimes are there simply to attract the conditioned souls. They're uncommon pastimes. And because they're uncommon, we see a situation where actually those who are unqualified get the qualification. that is most evident in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, where the most fallen, the most unqualified get the highest mercy. So this aspect of getting qualified to see Krishna, I want to explain now using one character from the Shastra. And he's Durvasa Muni. Very fiery personality. Now according to the Puranas, it's mentioned that one time Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, they got into an argument. A very heated argument. And as a result, Lord Shiva became very, very furious. We know he's Ashutosh. He gets very easily pleased, but Lord Shiva also gets very easily irritated and angered as well. So he was very furious, very angry. And it came to a point where his own wife, Parvati, she couldn't stay around her husband anymore. He was just too angry. And she started to call him Durvasa. And literally Durvasa means one who is difficult to stay close to. So then Lord Shiva was thinking to himself that, yeah, if I keep this anger, then, it's not going to help me in my relationship with my wife. So let me cast aside this anger. Right? So this was the nimitta karana, the efficient cause. Just like here we're seeing in this situation. The nimitta karana for this darkness enveloping the universe is the fact that the four Kumars are cursing Jay and Vijay. But the immediate cause is that Kashyapa and his wife Diti, right? They copulated at the inappropriate time. So in the same way, the nimitta karana was that Lord Shiva transferred his anger to Durvasa, who got born. And the immediate cause was that Atri Muni, meanwhile, he prayed to, Parameshwar? The Supreme whoever you are, Supreme Personality of Godhead, please come before me. And the three murtis came before him. Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Brahma. And he said, I asked for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Bhagwan, whoever he is. But they said, you didn't specify. You didn't specify him by the name. So all three of us have come. Because we are all the controllers within this mature universe. So, his wife Anasuya, by the arrangement of these three gods, Lord Vishnu, Shiva and Brahma, he got Somadev through Brahma, he got Durvasa through Lord Shiva, and he got Dattatreya through Lord Vishnu. So these were the three sons of Atri Muni. So this was the immediate cause. This is how Durvasa Muni came to be. So he represents that fiery anger of Lord Shiva. And that's why he is the way he is. But he transforms, and that's the point I'm getting to. He transforms as time progresses. So we're going to talk about the transformation of Durvasa Muni. So we understand in Shastra, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that Durvasa Muni can be attributed to the downfall of the whole Devatas. You remember? I forget which canto it's in. Maybe 6th canto, 7th, 6th. That Durvasa Muni, he had a garland. And then one day in a forest, he was walking with that garland, and along came Indra riding on Airavata, on his elephant carrier. And then he thought, let me give my garland to Indra. And he took off his garland and gave it to Indra. And then Indra, he wore it for some time, but then he gave it to his elephant. And then, being an elephant, not knowing the value of the garland, the elephant threw the garland, Airavata threw the garland on the ground, and he stamped on it. And this enraged Durvasa Muni. He became so angry. And we learn how Indra, he apologized. Please forgive me for doing this. And Durvasa was not willing to forgive Indra. So he cursed Indra. And in this way, the whole demigod population, they got cursed. And at that time of weakness, Bali Maharaj came. The leader of the Daityas, the leader of the Asuras, he came. And he fought with the Devatas and got the upper hand. And that's how that whole Samudra Manthan Leela takes place. So I think it's Lord Brahma or Lord Vishnu. He tells to Indra that if you want to get your strength back, you go and churn the ocean of milk with the demons. And you get that nectar. Because once you get that nectar, you'll get the power back. So that whole episode of the Samudra Manthan Leela, the downfall of the Devatas, and the appearance of even Vaman and the appearance of Vamanadev. No, sorry. Kurmadev. That whole Leela can be attributed initially to the curse of Durvasa Muni because of his short temper, because of his anger. However, even though he was like that, still from the very beginning, believe it or not, he was a devotee of Lord Nrsimha. Durvasa Muni, from the very beginning, was a devotee of Lord Nrsimha. If you read the Nrsimha Kavach Stotra, it's about 24, 25 verses. This is a stotra which was given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur to his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And every single day, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would recite the Nrsimha Kavach Stotra. I've seen some senior devotees in our ISKCON society, they also, every day, on a daily basis, recite this stotra as well. I think Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to recite, Bhakti Sharma Maharaj used to recite as well, like that. Now, if you read the stotra, one of the beginning verses, they explain that by reciting this very auspicious Nrsimha Kavach Stotra, all types of ghosts, hobgoblins, inauspicious elements, they are vanquished. And by reciting this very stotra, Nrsimha Kavach Stotra, Durvasa Muni, he became renowned throughout the world. And he conquered the 3 worlds just by reciting this Nrsimha Kavach Stotra. So we can understand from this that he used to recite this stotra every single day. So he had some sukriti, he had some bhakti unmukhi sukriti. But it was not powerful enough at that stage to overcome his material propensities of being short-tempered, being angry like that. Then what happened? When Lord Ramachandra was here, then it's in Ramayana, one of the last pastimes, I think. What happens one day is that Lakshman and Ram, they're in Ayodhya. And one day, Yamaraj, he comes to visit Ayodhya. And he wants to have a very confidential meeting with Ramachandra. So he comes dressed as a Brahmana, Yamaraj, and he enters the palace and he tells Lord Ramachandra, I'd like to have a meeting with you, but the condition is nobody should interrupt our meeting. If anyone steps into the room and interrupts our meeting, they will be duly executed. So then Ramachandra promises Yamaraj, okay, we'll have the talk, we'll have the meeting, but make sure all the doors are bolted and no one can come into the palace. And he tells Lakshman to stay guard, to stay put. So Lakshman is there, he's the guard to ensure no one comes and disturbs the meeting. But then who comes at that point in time? Durvasa Muni comes at that time. And he says to Lakshman, I want to have a meeting with Ramachandra. And if you don't allow me the meeting with Ramachandra, then I'll cast a curse upon all the citizens of Ayodhya. So Lakshman thinks to himself, I don't want this ill fortune to fall upon all the citizens of Ayodhya. At the same time, my master, my brother, he has ordered that no one should disturb the meeting. So what should happen? So Lakshman decides at that point in time that he himself will go and interrupt the meeting. He himself will risk his life and go and interrupt the meeting. Okay, these are all pastimes. So he goes inside, interrupts the meeting, and then, obviously, then he's put in that compromising situation. Then, as it turns out, Durvasa Muni has that interview with Lord Ramachandra, and he gets the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he gets some sweet words from Ramachandra. But at the same time, instead of executing Lakshman, as if you can do that, what happens is that Ramachandra decides to banish Lakshman from Ayodhya, which is as good as, it is said, which is as good as executing, because he never gets to see his brother again. And that is one of the Leelas in which how Lakshman disappears from the Ram Leela. It is said that he stays on the bank of the Sarayu river for some time, because he's not allowed back into Ayodhya, and after some time he just dips into the Sarayu river and he just disappears. So we can see here that Durvasa Muni was an instrument in the disappearance of Lakshman. But he got the association this time directly of Ramachandra. So again, his Sukriti is growing. He's being used as an instrument for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, a couple of days ago, Chiring Prabhu was reciting the story of Ambarish Maharaj. Right? How he came again with his disciples. He came again and Dwadashi was there. right? And then Ambarish Maharaj took the water, and again this angered Durvasa Muni. So then he created a big demon. Sudarshan Chakra released himself by his own will from the finger of Lord Narayan and came after Durvasa Muni. And the very famous verse you recited, Prabhu. Would you like to say it? Yeah. Yes. Naham tebyo managapi. So here in this Leela, Durvasa is furthering his purification. Again, he's entering Vaikuntha. Why? Because he got the association of Ramchandra previously. So that's why he's able to enter into Vaikuntha. He's getting the direct association of Narayan in Vaikuntha. He's paying obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he's doing something else. He's going back to Ambarish Maharaj, a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's paying obeisance to the devotee. So now he's recognized the supremacy of Krishna, and he's got his association twice, but now he's also submitting himself to Krishna's devotees, tadiyanam samarchanam, which is even more valuable than getting the direct association of Krishna, than serving Krishna directly. Then it continues in Dwapar Yuga, when Krishna was here. Did you know that Durvasa Muni also met with the Brajabasis as well? Before we come to the Brajabasis, I'll mention that who gave the benediction to Kunti Devi, the mother of the Pandavas? Durvasa Muni. He came and she served him some food or something. He was very pleased by that. So he gave her the boon that she could call upon any demigod. And this is something from the Shiva Puran. Again, we have to understand the proper context. But apparently one day, and this is something different to what Mahabharata says, but I'll just mention it because we're on that topic. So according to the Shiva Puran, one day Durvasa Muni was taking his bath in a river, and his kopin, it just went down the river. So at that time, Draupadi was there, and she immediately gave part of her garments to Durvasa Muni. And he was very pleased by that, and he offered her the benediction that her chastity will always be kept intact. So some people use this as a reason to say that that's why she got that unlimited sari during the disrobing. But we have to understand this in the proper context. For example, I'll explain it a bit further. It is mentioned that Durvasa Muni, he met with Srimati Radharani. And he asked Srimati Radharani to cook some sweet rice for him. So Srimati Radharani, she went, and immediately after being instructed by a Brahmana like Durvasa Muni, she went and she collected all the ingredients and she cooked some delicious sweet rice and she offered it to Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni was pleased by that. And then he offers the benediction to Srimati Radharani that whatever you cook will be nectar. So again, we have to understand this in the proper context as well. Srimati Radharani is the eternal consort of Lord Krishna. She doesn't need the benediction from Durvasa Muni for her food to be tasting like nectar. But still, Durvasa Muni is getting the credit in all these different situations. And when Mother Yashoda hears that Srimati Radharani has this benediction, then she asks Srimati Radharani, you please come to my house every day and you cook for Krishna, my son Krishna. There's another interesting pastime. I believe this is by Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, the uncle of Venkata Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis. So one day, what happened is that the gopis and Krishnas, they were together, and Durvasa Muni actually used to live in that Vrindavan area. He used to live on the other side of the Yamuna river. So he was actually situated in Vrindavan area. Now, what happens is that Krishna wanted Durvasa Muni to go and teach the gopis about himself, about transcendental knowledge. So on the pretext of doing that, because Durvasa Muni had gotten some education in the Gopal Tapani Upanishad, coming in the disciplic succession. So he wanted the gopis to get instructed by Durvasa Muni in that Upanishad. He wanted to teach them some transcendental knowledge so they could understand more about Krishna. So on that pretext, he told the gopis, go across the Yamuna river, cook some food and go across the Yamuna river and go and deliver this food to Durvasa Muni. Then immediately the gopis, they decided to follow Krishna's instructions. They cooked a big feast. They went to the shore of the Yamuna river, and then they asked Krishna, Krishna, how are we supposed to cross the Yamuna river with all this food in our hands? And then Krishna says, okay, just tell the Yamuna river that Krishna is a brahmachari. And they all started laughing. Krishna is a brahmachari? Krishna is not a brahmachari. And he says, go, just tell the Yamuna river, Krishna is a brahmachari. Then they go up to the Yamuna river and they say, Krishna is a brahmachari. Then immediately the Yamuna river parts way. And they walk through the Yamuna river to get to the other side. Once they get to the other side, they meet Durvasa Muni and they feed him. And Krishna's plan comes to part. They get instructed in transcendental knowledge about Krishna. But then they have to return back by crossing the Yamuna river again. But then again they're in the same dilemma. How are they supposed to cross with all this, all these utensils in their hands? So then at that time, Durvasa Muni says, go up to the Yamuna river and tell the Yamuna river that I am an eternal faster, an eternal upavasi, a nitya upavasi, right? Fasting means upavas. So tell the Yamuna river that I'm a nitya upavasi. Then they start laughing at Durvasa Muni. How can you be a nitya upavasi if we just fed you a feast? Remember, Durvasa Muni used to subsist only on the juice of durva grass. This was his fast. That was all he used to eat. So the gopis started laughing at Durvasa Muni. We just fed you a delicious feast, and you're telling us to go to the bank of the Yamuna and tell the Yamuna that you're an eternal faster, nitya upavasi. He says, go and tell, and if my words are true, the Yamuna river will part way. They go, and they say, Durvasa Muni is a nitya upavasi. Immediately, Yamuna river parts way. They walk through, they go back to the other side. Now they're confused. Hey, Krishna, you told us that, you're an eternal brahmachari, nitya brahmachari. Durvasa Muni is a nitya upavasi. And in both times, the Yamuna river parted way. How are we to understand this? How are these two things truthful? At that time, Krishna instructed the gopis and he told them that, yes, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but any time I interact with my devotees, specifically the gopis, any time I interact with any woman, there's not a tinge of lust in my mind, material lust in my mind. I only interact with my beloved devotees simply to please them, satisfy them, simply to reciprocate with their loving devotion with me. That's why Krishna is a nitya brahmachari. And what about Durvasa Muni? Why is he a nitya upavasi? Because even though Durvasa Muni always fasts, the only reason in his mind, Durvasa Muni's mind, that he ate the feast which the gopis offered him, because he wanted to reciprocate with their efforts. He did not enjoy any sense gratification for his tongue when he took the food which was offered by the gopis. So that's why he was in nitya upavasi, even though he took that food. So I'm trying to say that he got the association there of the Brajabasis. He got Krishna's mercy. He got the association of the gopis. So in this way, by that gradual purification, the association of Krishna himself, the association of Krishna's devotees, his mind, as time progresses, his heart is getting purified. Finally, he gets the opportunity to appear in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes as Gangadas Pandit, who is the teacher of Lord Chaitanya in Navadvip. And I'll finish with this pastime. During the Mahaprakash Leela, where Lord Chaitanya was exhibiting so many different manifestations, and he was telling different devotees about his reciprocation with them. Gangadas Pandit came, and Lord Chaitanya told him, do you remember that night? It was a stormy night, and you were running very fast, because these mlechas, they were coming after you with big swords, with big knives to kill you. And you're running, and you came to the edge of a river, and it was a dead end. You had nowhere else to go. And you just submitted, please help me, God, please help me, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, a boatman came, and he said, get in my boat.
And then he got in and I think he had his family with him as well. Gangadas Pandit was not running by himself, he had his family with him. So his whole family, they got on this boat and they were driven to safety across the river. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Gangadas Pandit that boatman was actually me. That boatman was actually Krishna, was actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He himself came to save his devotee. So in this way, through the gradual purification and association and service rendered to the devotees of Krishna, Durvasa's Muni's mind, who was exhibiting the anger and wrath of Lord Shiva, gradually became purified to the point where he entered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes and became a pure devotee of Krishna, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and entered the Nitya Lila. He went back to Godhead. Okay, so I'll finish here. Thank you very much. I'll just take one question because we're over time. Yoga Mishra Bhakti yogis. So they're Ashtanga yogis, but they're meditating on Paramatma within their heart. So if you read I think it's either the first or second chapter of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, their destination is explained there. Shukadeva Goswami is explaining. So their path back to Godhead is not direct. They get gradually elevated to higher planetary systems. They go to Maharlok. From Maharlok, they go to Brahmalok. And from there, when Brahma takes his jhanas from Satyalok back to Godhead, they go back with him. So they take a gradual approach to going back to the spiritual world. So no, I wouldn't say so. They're transcendentalists. They're yogis. They're Ashtanga yogis, but they're meditating on Krishna within their heart. Right? But they're not bhakti yogis. But they're like on the verge, because now they've understood that Krishna is within their heart. Now they've understood who is that person to whom I should render service to. But they're not rendering service to him yet. But at least they've come to understand, okay, this is the person in my heart, this is God, now I should start rendering service to him. So they're at that borderline stage where they're just about to start Bhakti Yoga. So that's why they're falling into the Shantaras category. So Shantaras, real Bhakti, real service starts from Dasyaras. But Shantaras is like, okay, service can be there, but it has to be stimulated by someone, by an external source. It's not like voluntary. So when they're stimulated in service, then they start to engage in Bhakti Yoga. Okay? No, they're seeing Paramatma. Paramatma is giving them vision within their... I don't know how it works. Yeah. Krishna, like we see in Narada Muni's pastimes, previously, when he was the son of the maidservant, right? So same thing. He sits down under a tree, he closes his eyes, he meditates, and then, Krishna comes just in his vision, in his meditation, like that. I would assume so, because they're surprised to see him. But it says here in the translation, or the purport, it was saying that they had already seen him within their hearts, but they had not seen him face to face. Okay? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.